What if every lesson you've ever heard about the 19th century was a deliberate fabrication? Imagine that the Industrial Revolution wasn't about humanity leaping forward, but rather about rebuilding from an apocalypse so vast that whole empires were wiped from memory. In this video, we'll take you on a global tour of buried facades, secret maps, orphan trains, and ghostly fairs, all pointing to a cataclysmic flood in the 1840s that drowned the Tartarian Empire and forced survivors to stack new streets atop the ruins. From New York's submerged storefronts to London's hidden chambers, from Chicago's raised boulevards to the orphan trains that repopulated empty territories, we'll examine photographs, architectural oddities, census anomalies, and immigration records that defy official explanations. Could it be that what we call progress was really recovery, and that Victorian ingenuity was nothing more than a cover story? Like and subscribe for more. Imagine walking down an 1860s New York avenue and noticing that the grand first-floor windows are buried entirely beneath the sidewalk. Official historians shrug, blaming street-level changes over decades. Yet it's not just one building, it's whole blocks, and it repeats itself in San Francisco, Chicago, London, Moscow, Melbourne, and countless other cities. Ornate entranceways that now lead to basements, elaborate stone columns hidden under pavement, sightlines that make sense only if these once majestic facades were at ground level. Are we to believe every city on Earth decided, independently and simultaneously, to raise its streets by 10, 15, even 20 feet, without leaving detailed records or a single, coherent explanation? It strains credulity. So let's flip the script. What if the streets didn't rise? What if something buried them? Welcome to Operation Uncovering, where we chase the traces of a calamity historians refuse to acknowledge: the Great Mud Flood of the 1840s that drowned the Tartarian Empire. Begin in Chicago. After the 1871 fire, we're told municipal engineers jacked up entire districts and pumped in fill to keep sewage away. But consider the scale: over 17,000 buildings, 334,000 residents, all needing to be lifted uniformly, foundations reinforced, streets held open for daily life. With 1870s technology, that's a Herculean task. Yet records speak of a swift, quiet operation completed in a few years. Doesn't that sound more like a cover story for excavating mud-clogged streets and cleaning off buried first floors than a grand public works debacle? Turn west to Seattle's Pioneer Square. Guides lead tourists through the underground, where shops and doorways lie intact 1 to 2 stories below the modern pavement. Official law credits an 1889 fire for the elevation change, but again, the logistics boggle the mind. Why burn down half a city only then to fill it in? Notice the craftsmanship: stone carvings framing doors that now serve as vault entrances, century-old molding underfoot, hidden as if nature itself dumped layers of sediment overnight. Cross the Atlantic to London. Beneath the capitals of global empires lie miles of rooms, corridors, and chambered vaults that weren't built for sewers or subways. Victorian-era photographs show facades halfway buried, grand shop windows peeking out of new-made caverns. Moscow's Old Quarter presents identical surprises: staircases descending into what should be ground-level palaces. Is it believable that each major metropolis just happened to raise its streets by 20 feet around the same time, erasing any mention in city records? Or is a simpler truth staring us in the face? Something massive, something global buried these cities under a flood of mud and water. To unearth the broader picture, we must also excavate history books. Before the mid-1800s, Maps across Europe and Asia label vast swaths of Siberia and Central Asia as Tartary or Tartaria, sometimes divided into Chinese Tartary, Great Tartary, Independent Tartary. These regions rivaled European empires in size, yet after 1850, Tartary vanishes with no war of conquest, no dramatic collapse, just silence and vague footnotes about tribes absorbed into Russia or China. Where did this empire go? How does a civilization spanning millions of square miles disappear overnight? The architecture betrays an answer. Towering domes, massive arches, intricate stonework, structures that decades of post-fire rebuilding couldn't replicate from scratch. Heating and ventilation channels built into walls, acoustics designed for whispering galleries. Only a culture with advanced engineering and mathematics could achieve such feats. Yet in the late 19th century, official photographs of new constructions often show finished buildings already standing, workers clearing mud and debris, polishing centuries-old stone. Take the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. History credits 2 years and temporary wooden frames for the White City's grand neoclassical palaces, only for them to be torn down immediately after. But the photos reveal weathered surfaces, signs of prior use, laborers uncovering, not erecting, stone monuments. Could these have been the remnants of Tartarian halls, excavated from beneath a muddy blanket, showcased briefly, then quietly dismantled, so no one would suspect their true origins? This pattern echoes at World's Fairs from Paris to Seattle, impressive new edifices that arise overnight, dazzle visitors, then vanish as mysteriously as they appeared. Meanwhile, paintings and photographs from the mid-19th century depict urban landscapes filled with mud piles, workers digging out buried buildings and fields, settlers reclaiming what was already built. Official accounts dismiss these as artistic dramatization or local disasters. Yet the consistency in America's West, Europe's coasts, Australia's outbacks, New Zealand's harbours points to something global. What of the people? Census records from 1840 to 1870 reveal wild swings, cities growing impossibly fast, populations plummeting without epidemics to explain them, huge rural zones suddenly abandoned, then refilled. And who were the orphan train riders? Between 1854 and 1929, 250,000 children were sent west from eastern shelters. The story told is one of urban poverty and overcrowding. But look closer. The kids arrive well-dressed, organized like troops, in uniforms not typical of slum dwellers. Farms in the Midwest claim them as laborers, even though those regions were supposedly being settled for the first time. What if these weren't orphans of neglect, but survivors of a global flood, separated from families by the deluge, then redistributed to repopulate emptied lands? Immigration figures pose the same puzzle. Between 1840 and 1860, some 4.2 million Europeans are said to have crossed the Atlantic, 200,000 people a year on ships carrying 500 souls apiece. That means hundreds of voyages annually, docking daily, processing massive crowds in ports that show scant evidence of handling such volumes. A more straightforward explanation. Many of those new arrivals were already here, displaced by catastrophe, shuffled around to fill the void left by drowned and buried communities. Consider San Francisco. The gold rush of 1849 is legendary. But did prospectors really carve a city of tents and timber from empty scrubland overnight? Or did they stumble upon an existing Tartarian settlement half swallowed by mud, then clear it, rebrand it, and feed the lore of a boomtown? Denver, Sacramento, Portland, Seattle, frontier cities spring into existence with paved streets, sturdy brick warehouses, and architectural flourishes that defy pioneer capabilities. The math doesn't add up, but the mud does, and the disasters themselves. From 1840 to 1870, dozens of great fires ravaged Chicago, Boston, Seattle, Hamburg, Constantinople. Survivors speak less of scorching flames and more of walls of water, subterranean springs bursting, streets inches deep in silt. Fire departments battled not just flames, but torrents of mud. Entire city blocks show flood deposits in photographs, with buildings standing stone intact, yet interiors eroded by water. Official histories chalk it up to freak weather, lantern accidents, and rapid fire spread. But the global simultaneity, the uncanny consistency in eyewitness remarks, mud up to the second floor, foundations undermined, streets turned to rivers of sediment, point to one event, a worldwide flood of mud, not just fire. What could trigger such an apocalypse? No known volcanic supereruption or asteroid impact occurred in the 1840s. No seismic chain plausible enough to spawn global tsunamis. Unless the event was man-made, perhaps a cataclysmic war employing advanced weapons that unleashed torrents of water and mud, destabilized coastlines, collapsed mountain dams. Who waged such a war? The Tartarian Empire itself, or enemies wielding weapons beyond Victorian science? After the flood, survivors faced a choice: admit an advanced civilization had fallen or pump out the mud and perpetuate a narrative of industrial progress. They chose the latter, and for nearly 2 centuries, the lie has held. The stakes go beyond old ruins. If Tartaria boasted technologies akin to wireless electricity, free energy devices, even seismic manipulators, as hinted by Tesla's suppressed blueprints, then our understanding of progress is skewed. What if the greatest advancements of the 20th century were rediscovered fragments of lost 19th century marvels? Who holds the keys to those secrets now? Governments, private vaults, corporate labs, all likely have catalogued what remains of Tartarian knowledge, even as mainstream history dismisses any suggestion of a mid-1800s civilization collapse as mere conspiracy. Why maintain the lie? Because a populace aware that a near-total extinction event happened less than 2 centuries ago, and that advanced societies can vanish in a generation, would question the security of our modern world. They demand decentralized resilience, investigate buried truths, challenge authority. By rewriting history as a steady march of progress, the powers that be ensure complacency. Now, open your eyes. Walk any old quarter, be it Edinburgh's Royal Mile, Prague's Old Town, or Melbourne's Collins Street. Look downward. The street lamps, the ornate ironwork, the arches that lead nowhere. Recognize that these aren't mere basements. They're echoes of a civilization reset. Flip through census tables and immigration logs. Do the math. Ask why every new city required instant monuments and paved avenues that should have taken decades to build by pioneer standards. Once you connect the dots, the buried windows, the redrawn maps, the repurposed World's Fair palaces, the streamlined orphan trains, the impossible immigration statistics, you can't unsee it. History wasn't a linear ascent. It was a phoenix rising from mud and ruin. Operation Uncovering has only scratched the surface. The 1840 mud flood and the fall of Tartaria waiting beneath our streets call on us to question every narrative polished by time. What triggered the deluge? Where did Tartarian science go? Are the same forces lying in wait, ready to strike again? And if so, where can we find the shelters, call them bunkers or safe cities, prepared by those in the know. This is more than a tale of buried architecture. It's a challenge to our assumptions about progress, power, and truth. The evidence stands silent in the stones underfoot, in the photographs tucked away in archives, in the numbers that don't add up. It demands a reckoning with a past we thought we understood and a future we may not be prepared to face. If you'd like more stories like this, please like and subscribe.